We are on lesson 2 of chapter 1, which is multiplying rational numbers. We're going to do 3 things today: multiply a fraction and an integer, multiplying 2 different fractions, and then multiplying decimals. The rules to keep in mind for positive and negative is when the sign is the same, when you're multiplying a positive and a positive, or if you're multiplying a negative and a negative, you're going to be getting a positive answer. When the sign is different, so a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, you're going to be getting a negative answer. So it's really important to pay attention to these positive and negatives because that's part of getting the answer right. Let's look at multiplying fractions and an integer first. So it tells us to multiply, write each answer in simplest form. What causes a lot of people some problems here is they see this number, which is not a fraction, and you're supposed to multiply it times a fraction. The main idea here is that you can turn any integer, like the 6, into a fraction. Just put the 6 on top, and then put a 1 in the denominator. And there you go. 6 over 1 times 2 over 3. And then with fractions, when you multiply them, you just multiply across. So you do 6 times 2, which would be 12. And then that would be over 3 times 1, which would be 3. Remember, we need to write this in simplest form then. So we could do 12 divided by 3 since 3 goes into 12. Remember, a fraction is an unfinished division problem. So that would be 4 over 1, or just 4. Our answer for this will be 4. We have negative 2 times 3 and 1/5. So first thing first, let's turn negative 2 into a fraction. So it'll be negative 2 over 1. And we have 3 and 1/5. So when we have this, we have a whole number and a fraction. We need to turn this into a fraction. So how to do that is you always take the number here, the 3, times the denominator, then plus the numerator. Same thing for all the fractions. So 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16, and then keep that denominator. So it would be 16 over 5. And then let's pretend this number in the middle here doesn't exist. We have negative 2 over 1 times 16 over 5. So let's multiply across. We have negative 2 times 16. Remember, negative and a positive will be a negative. So we have negative 32. 1 over 5, that would be over 5. So negative 32 over 5. Not sure if we can simplify this at all. 5 is divisible by 5 only, and then you can't divide that by 5. But we can turn this into a compound fraction with the whole number and then a fraction. So to do that, you just say, how many times can 5 go into 32? Well, 5 goes into 30 6 times. So your whole number is going to be 6. And then what is left over after 30? 32 is 2 greater than 30. So your numerator left is going to be 2. And then you keep that same denominator of 5. So your answer is left at 6 and 2/5 for this one. But don't forget that negative because we had negative 32 right here. So negative 6 and 2/5. Now we are multiplying fractions now, just multiplying across. This will be a little bit simpler than what we just did because it's already in fraction form here. We have negative 3/5 times negative 1/4. So we're going to have 3 on top because 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 4 on the bottom will be 20. Can't simplify that anymore, so the big question now is this going to be a positive or a negative answer? Remember, the signs are the same. We have a negative and a negative, so that's going to turn it into a positive answer. So 3/20 is your answer. Here we have 5 over 12 times negative 12 over 5. So we would do 5 times 12 on top here, which would be 60. And then 12 times 5 would also be 60. Put the line in the middle. This would be a negative answer then. So if we're going to simplify that, 60 goes into 61 time. 60 goes into 61 time here. So our answer would actually be 1 over 1, or negative 1 over 1, which would just be negative 1. A good shortcut for these problems too is always to look for ways that these numbers, these corner numbers, can be crossed out, or even numbers on top and bottom. So here we see 12 and 12. These are both divisible by 12. You can do your work right here. So that would be 1 and 1. And then you'll notice the same thing for this. We have 5 and 5. So that would be both divisible by 5, which would turn them both into 1s. And look at that. You have 1 over 1 times negative 1 over 1, which would give you a negative 1. So this is a really good way to simplify this for yourself, to give you a shortcut, save you all this extra simplification later. Now for decimals. Decimals are going to be the easiest here because we can just multiply and then do the negative and positive rule. So we have 5.2 times negative 5. So if we're going to multiply that, we just do 5.2 times 5, which would be 26. And then we have two negatives, so that would be a positive 26. Now we have negative 0.07 times 4.6. So 0.07 times 4.6 is 0.322. And then we have a negative, and then we have a positive. So that means they're different, which means our answer will be a negative 0.322.